So, und damit willkommen zurück zu Chaos Head Noah über die Commission of Zero Patch. Und man sieht, wir sind hier scheinbar in Tokio am Hauptbahnhof. Den kennt man vielleicht aus Persona 5 oder so. Und ich bin mir gar nicht mehr so sicher, was genau passiert ist. Ich glaube, wir sind irgendwie weggerannt oder so. Auf jeden Fall ist es empty. That was the state of Shibuya Station, which I could see from the wide junction running in front of 107. Ah ja, Shibuya, nicht Tokio an für sich, sondern der Stadtteil Shibuya natürlich. A world without sound. A world that felt dead. A place which had always been flooded with overwhelming sound, now ruled by silence. The only thing I could hear was the sound of my own heavy breathing.
そんな、
I fell to my knees in the middle of the large street. I couldn't walk another step. The shock had stolen every last ounce of strength from my body.
ここ、渋谷だろ。
There was no one to my left, to my right. In front of me, behind me, there was no one anywhere. Even though 7 p.m. on a Saturday night was when Shibuya should have been the most crowded. Well, what's going on? This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I closed my eyes and cradled my head. This was a dream, an illusion. This couldn't be reality. Yes, it was true that I wanted to live a quiet and peaceful life all by myself. I didn't want anyone to interfere with me, and I didn't want to get involved in anything. But that didn't mean I wanted to live in a world where no one existed. If no one else existed, who would pay for my living expenses? If no one else existed, who would make boxed lunches for me to eat? If no one else existed, who would play ESO with me? If no one else existed, a sound. I had heard a sound. It hadn't come from me. It had been from someone else. Someone was here. Someone other than me was nearby. I felt like I had been saved, as I'd thought it would just it was just a coincidence. It only appeared like there was no one here. In truth, no one had disappeared. I wasn't the only one left in the world. I was so relieved that I almost started crying. I turned my gaze towards the sound.
君は、
It was a boy in a wheelchair. A short distance away from me, though still in the middle of the intersection, he sat quietly in place. I couldn't quite figure out how old he was. If I had to guess from his size alone, I would say he looked like he was in elementary school. He was wearing his head so low that I couldn't see his expression very well. But
やっと会えたね。
I could hear the boy's voice extremely clearly. It felt like he was whispering directly into my ear, which made me turn around. Of course, there was no one there.
あ、あの、これ、どうなってるんですか？
Even though he was younger than me, I ended up speaking formally to him.
どうして、誰もいないのか？君、 君は理由を知ってますか？
知ってるよ。
Despite how young his voice sounded, there was nothing childish about it.
それより、僕のメッセージは受け取ってくれた。
Message? What message? I had no idea what he was talking about.
誰だ君は。
The boy moved his wheelchair forward slightly. The wheelchair was old, and it made a rusty sound as it came closer to me.
その目誰の目でしょ？
I was confused. Why had he murmured, "Those eyes are those eyes," just now? Who was he?
目覚めるんだ。早く。出ないと、もっとたくさんの人が死んじゃうことになるから。
君は一体。
I rubbed my eyes to wipe away my tears, and because of that, I was finally able to get a clear look at the boy's face. The boy wasn't a boy. His skin was covered with wrinkles like an old man. His cheeks were hollow. His eye sockets had sunken into an abnormal extent. His pupils were cloudy. He had no eyebrows, and his body was as small as a child's.
僕は将軍だよ。
For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. My head felt like it had been struck by a hammer. The ground was shaking violently. No, my body was falling over. I shot my hands out onto the asphalt to keep myself upright. What had he just said? Shogun? He was Shogun?
忘れないで。君は逃げちゃいけない。
I lifted up my head and watched as Shogun, who had already turned his back to me, left Scrabble Crossing. His wheelchair was getting farther and farther away, making a creaking sound as it moved. The thought of chasing after him and pressing him for answers didn't even cross my mind. I didn't think of running up and punching him in the face for dragging me into this either. I wasn't even remotely a confrontational person. My head started to hurt. The area around my temples throbbed with pain. Still cowering on the spot, I tried to endure it. In the world without sound, a discordant noise began to spread, an all-encompassing static. Whose voice was that? Don't look at me. What had previously been just a random discordant mess of garbled static gradually turned into a real voice. Someone gently placed a hand on my shoulder.
邪魔なんだっつうの。
何してんだろうね。
最近の若いもんは。
なんかのパフォーマンスじゃないの？タク。
While still trying to endure the pain of my headache, I looked up. The demon girl, Rimi, was peering at my face as she stood over me. Eyes that were clear and full of life, eyes that looked at me and only me. Again, this girl had appeared out of nowhere once again.
歩ける？歩いて。
She wrapped her hand under my arm and tried to make me stand up. I shrieked and shook her off. I came to my senses and looked around. I was still in the middle of the street, but it wasn't deserted anymore. There were people around me in every direction, walking every which way without paying me any mind.
タク
Rimi, with a face that looked like she was about to cry, reached out to me once more.
今は私の言うことを聞いて
夜だ
When I screamed, the throbbing in my head transformed into an intense stabbing pain. Even so, I ignored it, scrambling back on all fours to try and get away from Rimi.
お前だろお前が見せたんだお前の妄想だ僕の心を支配して精神攻撃をこの悪魔めお前なんて剣で殺してやる
Wow.
ベースに帰れば僕には理想
An abrupt impact ran through my cheek. It stung with pain and it began to heat up. She had slapped me. She was going to kill me once and for all. Scurrying back on all fours, I tried as hard as I could to escape with my life. But Rimi quickly grabbed my hand. With a strength I never thought a girl could have, she pulled me toward her. Oh. And embraced me. Her soft form gently enveloped my own. It was so warm. I could smell a tiny hint of sweat. Her silky hair tickled the tip of my nose.
しっかりして
With such an anticlimax, my whole body felt like it was about to give out.
ここにいたら危ないよ
Her voice was slightly shaky. I couldn't tell if she was crying or not.
信号赤になっちゃってるから
I was so confused. Was she not going to kill me? Why was she helping me? The hallucination from before, where all the people of Shibuya disappeared, wasn't something she had forced me to see? When I felt such a kind, gentle warmth, when she had embraced me so innocently, it shook everything I had believed up until that point. Could it be that Sakihata Rimi wasn't actually a demon at all? Or was it foolish to believe that? What if this was just a cunning way to deceive me? Regardless, one thing was for sure. With Rimi hugging me, I felt an incredible sense of relief. I had no idea what to call such a strange sensation. Upon letting go of me, Rimi put my face between her hands, then stared at me once again. Her eyes were slightly red.
お願い今は私についてきていい
For some reason, I nodded. We were standing still, alone in the middle of the empty intersection. A number of people on the sidewalk waiting for the pedestrian signal to change were watching us closely. We could hear a few people laughing here and there. Many cars had their headlights trained on us, and were starting to honk their horns. Rimi grabbed my hand tightly and started running towards the sidewalk. She pulled me along with her, and I followed. With countless horns blaring at us, we made it to the sidewalk. Rimi breathed a sigh of relief and stopped. My hand was still in hers. Just being held in this way made my heart feel more and more at ease. I wanted to submit myself to this feeling. I wanted to stay like this forever. Rimi turned back in my direction.
無事でよかったね。
She smiled an incredibly happy smile. I didn't know whether it was real, an act, or what exactly it was. But
話してよ。
because I had been so hostile to her until now, because I had thought of her as a demon until now, if I let her win me over like this, I felt like I'd cease being myself.
あ、ごめんごめん。
She quickly let go of my hand.
それにしてもびっくりした。タクが道の真ん中でうずくまってるんだもん。信号が赤になった時はどうなることかと。
I turned my back to Rimi as she started talking cheerfully. I walked off, pushing my way through the crowd of people.
僕、帰る。
じゃあ送るよ。具合悪いんでしょ。
Her voice chased me from behind, but I shook my head in refusal.
タク。
The cheerfulness from before had vanished from her voice. I felt terrible, considering how much she had done to help me, so I
ありがとう。
just barely managed to squeeze out those words. To think that the three investigative divisions would actually be merged into one. Staring at the detectives gathered in the Shibuya Police Department's conference room, Ban Yasuji thought that to himself. The Inokashira Line Shibuya Station public bathroom homicide case, or as the media called it to amuse themselves, the vampire case, had caused an increasingly serious drop in manpower. When three brutal murders occurred within the same jurisdiction, within the same period of time, the possibility of the single perpetrator became more and more evident. A suggestion had been raised that the Cornelius Tower mass suicide case be handled by the juvenile division, but since the media had been treating it as part of New Gen, there was the possibility that if the police treated the case differently, they would be subjected to criticism. Therefore, it was only natural that the central office had chosen the only remaining option, to merge the several investigation headquarters. With this integration now in place, the group was reviewing the series of New Gen cases one by one. The projection screen at the front of the conference room displayed a series of photographs of the crime scenes, one after the other. Suva had been chosen to hold the presentation. He had stayed up all last night going over the documents endlessly. Good work, Ban muttered internally, chin resting in his hands.
コーネリアスタワー集団投身自殺事件の発生は9月7日っす。です。ニュージェネとマスコミが故障している4つの事件の中では一番最初に発生してます。午後11時半ごろ、渋谷コーネリアスタワー屋上のヘリポートから男女5人が転落、全員死亡しました。5人は全員未成年の高校生。男が3人、女が2人。ただし5人のうち男女1人ずつだけが同じ学校なだけで、それ以外の3人はいずれも別の学校でした。5人それぞれの爪の間にわずかな肉片が残っており、手のひらに引っかき傷があったことが司法解剖で判明しました。そこから5人は互いに手をつないだ状態で転落したと推測されます。屋上には遺書らしきものはなし。被害者5人は学校帰りに待ち合わせてコーネリアスタワーへ向かったようです。なお、事件性があることを示す根拠としては、コーネリアスタワー屋上が関係者以外立ち入り禁止であったことが挙げられます。事 件があった時間、屋上への扉は施錠されており、その扉のドアノブに被害者5人の指紋は付着してませんでした。また5人の遺品からも扉の鍵は見つかっていません。このことから被害者以外の第三者が事件前後にその現場にいた可能性があります。その第三者が扉の鍵を持っており、事件前あるいは事件後に鍵を閉めて立ち去ったという線で捜査を続けています。コーネリアスタワーのホテル従業員全員への聞き取り調査は終了。ほぼ全員にアリバイがありました。今はタワーに入っている企業の社員に話を聞いているところです。被害者たち5人には今のところ自殺する理由は見つかっていません。家族、友人、学校の教師など5人中4人の関係者が口を揃えて自殺する理由などないと断言しています。
The show swept to a picture of the second case, the Shibuya Station undergrad and fetus homicide case.
続いて通称妊娠男事件についてですが、事件発生は9月19日、通称集団ダイブ事件から12日後。第一発見者は現場近くのカラオケ店店員、遺体発見は午前5時前後。被害者は渋谷区在住の大学3年生、近衛千鶴夫21歳。発見された時にはすでに死亡してました。死亡推定時刻は遺体発見の約4時間前、19日の午前1時頃です。遺体は腹部が不自然に大きく膨れ上がっており、中から胎児が発見されました。司法解剖の結果、被害者は生きたまま腹部を何者かに切開され、胃の中に胎児を入れられたようです。胎児はすでにその時点で亡くなっていたと思われます。被害者が死亡したのは腹部を縫合された後、縫合した部分をかきむしったり、縫合糸を一部引きちぎった形跡が見られました。胎児は妊娠8ヶ月ぐらいの状態で、母親の体から帝王切開で取り上げられたと考えられます。胎児の母親については今のところ見つかってません。その生死についても不明です。 DNA 鑑定の結果、胎児と被害者には血縁関係はありませんでした。ちなみに胎児の血液型は B 型、被害者の血液型は A 型です。
Suva took a breath. He seemed exhausted from all the talking. Furthermore, he must have been awfully nervous giving a presentation in front of so many senior detectives.
次に第3の事件、丸山町貼り付け殺人事件です。
After a short delay, the next slide displayed a photo of the crucifixion crime scene.
これが現場写真です。事件発生は9月29日。被害者は太田久志56歳、都東大学教授。第一発見者は現場のすぐ近くのアパートに住む男性。被害者の死因は絞殺でした。殺害された後で10本程度の釘を使って貼り付けにされていました。見ての通り、遺体には外傷はほとんどありません。釘についても貼り付けは一部肉体を貫通しているものもありましたが、基本的には衣服を通して貼り付けられている状態です。マスコミでは貼り付け、血の惨劇などと謳われてますが、出血は全くなし。釘はドイツのクロイツナーゲル社が販売している特徴的な長い十字架のような杭です。
Die deutsche Firma Kreuznagel. Weil es Kreuze sind, mit denen man Opfer an die Wand nageln kann oder was? Okay, okay.
犯人が十字架型をあえて選んだということから、宗教的な側面からも捜査を進めてます。
Wenn ich mich recht entsinne, war unsere Delusion, wo wir diesen Mord quasi vorhergesehen haben, da war das aber wiederum sehr blutig gewesen, während hier jetzt in den Fotos von der Polizei und auch den Kommentar von seiner Präsentation ist es halt gar nicht blutig. Was ein bisschen sehr seltsam ist.
事件の起きた21時から21時半の間に現場周辺で壁に杭を打ち付ける音が数十分続いていたという証言が複数得られました。被害者の死亡推定時刻がほぼそれと同じ時間であることから、おそらく被害者は現場かそのすぐ近くで殺害されたと思われます。また信憑性は怪しいですが、事件現場で私立水明学園の女生徒を見たという証言も上がってます。最後に井の頭線渋谷駅トイレ殺人事件、通称ヴァンパイア事件です。
Die haben auch tolle Namen immer. Vampire.
事件発生は10月10日。遺体発見は午前5時半ごろ、駅員が発見しました。被害者の身元は今のところ不明。身元を示すような遺留品は一切ありませんでした。死亡推定時刻は前日の午前10時から午後6時の間。遺体の血液は全て抜かれており、まるでミイラのような状態で放置されていました。ご存知の通り、この写真が何者かによって撮影され、遺体発見より15分ほど前にインターネットのオークションに出品されており、
As he listened to Suva's explanation, Ban gave a light click of the tongue. Seems like death is what's in these days. Und damit haben wir Kapitel 3 scheinbar abgeschlossen. Chapter 4, Die Sword. Ja, eventuell kriegen wir unser Die Sword jetzt. Science City was a pair of buildings located just south of Shibuya Scramble Crossing. A small plaza rested in front of the entrance to the east building. While it was not nearly as big as the ones in front of Hachiko, the Moai statue? Ich weiß jetzt nicht, wie ich das aussprechen soll. Or other popular destinations, it still found itself used quite often as a meeting place. Even now, around a dozen people were staring at their cell phones, waiting for their engagements to begin. Among those few, only one girl wore an oddly stern expression on her face as she idled, a high school student known as Aoi Senna. She was standing next to the escalator leading down from the Inokashira line station. She leaned her back against a nearby white pillar as she thoroughly scanned the environment with her gaze. In contrast to both the sharpness of her gaze and the season, she was nibbling on a popsicle, which in turn made her appear incredibly charming to the casual observer. In truth, the girl was not waiting for anyone, but was instead quietly observing the passersby. From where she was standing, she could see all the way to the Jumbotron located at Scramble Crossing. A music video from a famous singer was being displayed on it, and on the lower portion of the screen a news sticker was reporting the latest information on the recent string of incidents colloquially referred to as New Gen. Not a day went by without the New Gen related news. It was everywhere. TV, newspapers, the internet, weekly magazines, jumbotrons, electronic billboards, everywhere. Although Senna had absolutely no interest in the phenomenon, she would often overhear people speaking about it as she passed them by on the streets of Shibuya. Those eyes are those eyes. Over the past few days, she had begun to see several people wearing t-shirts with those words emblazoned on them. In Shibuya, the phrase had become popular as an obscure meme, and it was now starting to really take off. Despite the brutal scene the words originated from, people happily walked on and down the streets, raving about how well the shirts were selling at souvenir shops in Harajuku, a clear indication of disinterested people were in anything other than themselves. Senna snorted quietly in a contemptuous display, finished the last bite of her popsicle, and closed her eyes softly without losing her stern expression. She listened carefully to the noise of the city, and an abundance of different sounds billowed in front of the station on the Sunday afternoon. The roar of trains arriving at the platform, the blaring horns of taxis, people walking and talking, the background music coming from the jumbotrons and from the inside the Science City stores, the announcements telling people how to safely ride the escalators. The sounds were never allowed to end. Before one sound finished, another one would appear, creating a multi-layered discord that rang throughout the station. In the midst of all the discordant noise, Senna focused her attention only on the people's voices. Her mind blocked out all other sound, and their words soon became clear.
結局全部同じ犯人なのかな。
言ってたぞ。手口が違いすぎるって怖くね？バンドの歌詞と一緒らしいじゃん。ファンタズムな。お前あのバンド現実的に有名な仲間今時ファンタズム知らないなんてさ。じゃあ CD 貸せよ。くれてるよな。ほらこれ見てくれ。この前買って超ゲルのメタル結構来るじゃね？マジで来てるやつだ。でもあれじゃね？これってニュージェネの犯人に殺してくださいってアピールしてるようなもんじゃん。俺もいよいよ全国デビューか。
最近渋谷超怖くない？マジうざい。やるけど入場何よ。そういうクラス殺される可能性あるじゃない？同じ女だし。キモい男とかだけ殺してほしいよね。マジ応援する。
A short click of the tongue escaped from Senna's mouth, and she stopped listening soon after. There was nothing of value to be found in any of the noise. After all, noise was simply that. Noise.
この視線の感覚。気のせいか。
Once more, Senna examined her surroundings. For a while now, she had been feeling a repulsive sensation, like cold fingers caressing her spine. A gaze being cast upon her by an unknown entity. One with which she was unable to pinpoint exactly what the source was. Senna pushed herself off the pillar she was leaning against. Then, as if she had just remembered something, she stared down at the popsicle stick in her hand. Gradually growing more and more discontent, she wrinkled her brow and began to walk quickly toward the station. Yo, Pika, yo!
あの空はどうしてあんなに泣きたくなるくらい青いのかな。
Because someone wished for it to be.
私は望んでない。
No, but I did. Because this place is your image world, but at the same time, it is mine as well.
ねえ、あの空はどこにあるの？
wherever you wish for it to be.
望んでいいの？朝だよー。ほら起きて。起きなさい。
Ow. Seiratan was calling me. Last night's ep of Blood Tune was awesome. Seiratan played a huge part in it, and there was a super hot kiss scene. The animation quality was practically movie tier too.
起きたらおはようのキスしてあげるからさ。って私何言ってんだろ。バカバカ今の忘れて。
Seiratan was calling me. Plus, she was saying such Moe things that I could not wake up. I tore the blanket off my body and got up from the sofa with a groan.
ちょっといつまで寝てるんさ。このボケナス。こうなったら私のサムライコンデンサでぶん殴って起こし。
The moment I turned off my alarm clock, the voice of Seiratan that had been echoing throughout the room disappeared.
おはよう、セーラ。
The Seira alarm clock I had was very useful. If I didn't turn it off, the volume would slowly get louder and louder, and if I still didn't get up, an obnoxious buzzer sound would ring out. I wanted it to be Seiratan who woke me up in the morning, so I made it a point to wake up and turn it off before the buzzer. I had only failed to do so once or twice so far. After all, being woken up by Seiratan was a great way to start the day. Waking up was the absolute worst. I had played Vidya until dawn, and the couch had been extremely uncomfortable once I actually had gone to sleep. But having her to wake me up helped alleviate some of that pain. Today was a school day. I'd skipped a day last week, so my minimum attendance chart was really starting to fall apart. With the chart, I was only slated to go twice this week, but because of that deviation, I was stuck with having to go 3 times instead. I didn't want to go, but it'd be much worse if I didn't. If I missed any more days, I wouldn't be able to graduate. Then again, whether or not I graduated made no difference to me, to be honest. Just a moment ago, I'd been having a dream with Remy in it. It was a strange dream. One that felt terribly wistful, one that felt terribly lonesome, one that felt terribly sad, and one that felt terribly distant. Would Remy come to school today? I'd been thinking about the day before yesterday constantly. I'd been thinking about it so often that I'd even forgotten to play ESO yesterday. There'd been the appearance of Shogun and the delusion where every person in Shibuya disappeared, but I was barely giving either of those things any thought. It had to have just been a delusion of mine. There was no way Shogun could be such an old man. The idea of people just disappearing from Shibuya or whatever was completely ridiculous. So there was no point worrying about it. It had been a horrible, realistic delusion, sure, but the fact that I'd allowed myself to fall for something so unrealistic so easily and get all freaked out about it was just embarrassing. But regardless, above all else, I was thinking about Remy, the girl I had been calling the demon girl until now, only a couple of days ago. Gut, ich merke gerade, dass hier die Soundeffekte zu leise für den Ausgang sind hier. Deswegen mache ich das mal ein kleines bisschen hoch. Ja gut, was heißt hier klein? Das ist eigentlich relativ hoch. Okay, das ist ein ganz kleines Stück runter, dass es zumindest ein bisschen da ist. Most of what I'd felt back then was shaky and surreal, as if it were some sort of dream. But I could still vividly remember the sensation of Rimi's body embracing my own. If she hadn't done that, I could have gone insane and lost myself completely. Why had Rimi saved me? Maybe because really were friends. I didn't have any memories of us being classmates now, let alone since first year. Nor did I remember going to the movies with her along with Mizumi-kun. But the way she treated me was definitely how you would treat a real close friend. She'd even seemed like she'd been close to crying when she held me. That, at very least, I didn't think was an act. That was the first time I'd ever seen a girl care about, let alone cry over an otaku freak like me. When she treated me like that, all my fears and suspicions were blown away in an instant. In fact, it made me feel like I might fall in love with her. No, I obviously couldn't let myself do that. Confusion invaded every corner of my mind. How was I supposed to act around Rimi from now on? Was Rimi my ally or my enemy? Was Rimi the new gen culprit? She had saved me. That was an undeniable fact. But it was just as much a fact that I had seen her standing still as could be at the scene of the crucifixion covered in blood. On my way to school, I stopped by Choto Park. After what happened with Yua, I'd put a stop to my habit of eating breakfast there before going to school. There was no way I could feel even remotely relaxed when I thought that Yua could be watching me from anywhere. And even if I ignored that, if she came up to talk to me, she would start going off about her irritating, delusional shizu bullshit all over again. I didn't want anything to do with a girl like her. Yua was the Rimi's underling. Sure, my original guess may have been incorrect. But that didn't mean that Yua wasn't my enemy. It was still possible that Shogun was the boss of the whole thing and Yua was one of his underlings. Either way, I knew I'd better off staying as far away from her as I could. And yet I found myself coming here today for some reason. I examined my surroundings carefully to make sure that I couldn't see Yua anywhere. And once I knew the coast was clear, I slowly sat down on my usual bench. I took a bite of the chocolate bread I'd just bought from the convenience store, then looked out at the pond. There was next to no wind, and the surface of the water was calm and serene. I could see the occasional shadows of carp-esque fish gliding through the murky water. The park was unusually empty today. It was a very quiet spot. As my gaze wandered across the park, I couldn't help but think about Rimi. To be honest, I'd been dreading going to school today. I knew I'd have to face her if I did. That was the real reason why I was stalling at the park. I felt like I'd said a lot of awful things to her. And yet the smile on her face never faltered, and she always treated me like I was a close friend. And I was sure that when I went to school today, she would keep on doing that as if nothing had happened. She had She would smile and talk to me like we were friends, pretending that she didn't even care at all about what happened in front of 107. It was hard to put into words, but I felt a little bit annoyed by her constant cheerfulness. Yet at the same time, I also ended up feeling more cheerful myself when I was with her. I wasn't sure how to act once I did run into her. It was true that I didn't think she was a demon anymore. But honestly, I didn't think of her as a friend either. Mizumi-kun had said that she and I had been really close classmates for the past year and a half, but I didn't remember anything like that at all. Maybe it really was because of the person controlling me, but making my memories of Rimi and only Rimi disappear with pinpoint accuracy like that, there was no way that was possible. Upon entering the school building, I lowered my head even farther towards the ground. As was my usual MO, I kept close to the wall and walked slowly towards the staircase. My class was on the 3rd floor. Getting up there was a pretty big hassle. They could really use an escalator or something. When I reached the foot of the staircase, I spotted a girl climbing unsteadily up the stairs. She was dragging her right leg as little as she walked. Maybe she had twisted it. Her petite body swayed from side to side. She looked extremely unstable. As other students passed by her one after the other, the girl slowly continued to climb, exactly one step at a time. Watching her from below, I would be able to see her panties any second now. Shit, if I kept this up, I would be labeled a total pervert. Last thing I needed was to go in front of a mirror and see myself as Bill Clinton or some shit. With that thought in my mind, I stepped onto the stairs in order to pass the girl, but right when I did, the girl caught the tip of her shoe on one of the steps and she immediately staggered. She then fell down so hard you could almost feel the crash sound effect. Fortunately, she had ended up falling on the landing, so she hadn't fallen down the entire staircase. She was still down on her knees from the pain though, and was staying pretty still. Could this be a flag? Yeah, no way. Even if it was, calling out to her or anything even remotely similar would be impossible for me. So I hurriedly slipped past her. Sorry, but you should get some womanizer who is actually into 3D to help you. Someone like Mizumi-kun. You really shouldn't rely on me. But the girl was staying curled up on the ground so motionlessly, I started to get a little worried. I was halfway up the stairs when I slowly turned back around to check on her. The girl was gripping on the railing and trying her absolute hardest to stand back up. Her knees were trembling. She looked like a newborn fawn or something. Her knee was oozing blood. Maybe she had scraped it. Her face, I'd seen it before. Wasn't the girl who had transferred into my class last week? What was her name again? I couldn't remember. Oh wow, she was crying. Did it hurt that badly? The fall had definitely been pretty bad, but not bad enough that she would cry from it. There was nobody else willing to lend her a hand. After just barely managing to stand up, she bent forward and peered down at her knee. She must have been checking to see if she had heard it. The transfer student wiped away her tears, set down her bag on the spot, and started rummaging around inside it. What's she looking for, I wondered. Suddenly she raised her hand above her head and in a triumphant manner. Clasped in her hand was a band-aid. Our eyes met. The transfer student went red in surprise soon after, then hung her head. Regardless, she looked like she was okay, so I was sure she would be fine without me. Thinking that, I hurriedly made my way to class. As per usual, I kept my head down and my gaze fixed on my toes. And while still remaining silent, I took my seat. When I sat down, I remembered that the transfer student had said something to me on the day she had transferred. I'm so happy we're in the same class or something. I'd forgotten all about it after everything with Rimi, but I wondered what she had meant by that.
Yo, Taku.
Still according to my routine, Mizumi called out to me. Maybe he didn't have any other friends besides me. He had always talked to me and no one else, so I was starting to genuinely suspect that.
聞いてくれよ。昨日さ、怪しいおっさん2人が校長室に入ってくのを見たんだ。で、俺とリミトでこっそり盗み聞きしてみたらびっくりしたぜ。その2人、刑事だったんだぜ。え？
Detectives?
なんか深刻そうに全校生徒の名簿とか見ててよ。もしかしてニュージェネと関係あんのかな？
Maybe the true new gen culprit was someone at this very school. I couldn't help it, but a face popped into my head. Rimi's.
まあ、盗み聞きしてたら見事にバレちゃったんだけどね。
I jumped. Speaking of the devil, Jesus Christ, I felt my heart rate leap when I heard Rimi's voice invade the conversation. I couldn't look up. I was too nervous, but this was a completely different kind of nervousness than last week's.
あれはお前がドア勝手に開けたせいだぞ。分かってんのか？
しょうがないでしょ。本物の刑事さんって見るの初めてだったからちょっと興奮しちゃってつい。
何をどうやったらついドアを開けるんだよ。おかげで俺らまで刑事から話を聞かれる羽目になったんだからな。
大臣ってば刑事さんに聞かれちゃまずいことでもあったの？
そういうお前はどうなんだ？
さあね。
Mizumi-kun and Remi were having a conversation with my desks sandwiched in between them. They were completely ignoring my existence. But to be honest, I was grateful for that. Even if Remi did talk to me, I didn't have any faith that I'd be able to say anything back. I was hoping that the bell would ring before they got the chance to say anything to me. But when I glanced at the clock, I saw that there were still about 5 minutes until class started.
そういやタク、ここに来る途中で梢ちゃん見なかったか？
Kozul-chan? Who?
ああ、そっか。どうせお前のことだから覚えてねえとは思ったけど、マジでそうだったんだな。先週転校してきた子のことだよ。折原梢ちゃん。
Oh, so that was her name. Orihara Kozue.
階段で
階段？
見た。
お、そっか。じゃあもうすぐ来るな。
Mizumi-kun's voice gave off an aura of intense enthusiasm. I hadn't seen him this energetic since a few days ago when he had found out that FES was from the next class over. Or FES. In other words, I'd never seen him give his all for anything except girls. Which reminded me that just last week, Mizumi-kun had already gone to hit on the transfer student the moment she had arrived. You really are incorrigible. You've got a girlfriend and everything. I hope you are really real proud.
小勢ちゃんってマジ可愛いと思わねえ
He asked me something I had trouble answering. I moved my head down ambiguously, which he apparently took as a yes.
太郎俺一目で気に入っちまったよなんか守ってやりたくなるんだよな男子みんなも同じ意見だよドイツも可愛いって言ってんだけどよ女子の間じゃあんま評判良くねえんだよなまだ転校してきたばっかだぜそれなのに早くもうざいみてえな意見まで出てきてんだよこのクラスの女子って性格悪いやつ多すぎだ
それって大臣のせいじゃないのだいたいそのうざいって言ったのどうせ大臣の彼女でしょ
ああそうだけど
そりゃあ彼女にしてみればうざいに決まってるよ自分の彼氏が目の前で折原さんを口説きに行っちゃってたらさ私でさえよく喧嘩売られるんだから大輔君に近寄らないでってしかも一人じゃなくて何人かから言われた
マジ
自覚なしか少しは反省したら
いやーモテる男はつらいぜ
これだよさすが女の敵もう私フォローしてあげないからねあ折原さん来た
なんか怪我してるみたいじゃね
本当だどうしたんだろう
She had gotten hurt back when I saw her on the stairs. I obviously wasn't going to tell them that though. I was trying to avoid talking to Rimi in any way possible.
俺ちょっと言ってくれ
Mizumi-kun ran up to where the transfer student was. Thanks to that, Rimi was the only one left standing close to my desk. Ah, Mizumi-kun, please don't go. Rimi didn't say anything, but she didn't move away from my seat either. Considering the fact that I was hunched over so far on my desk that I could nearly sink my teeth into it, I couldn't see her expression. All I could see was her waist. But if that were true, then that would mean she had to be facing me. In other words, she was looking at me. I should probably say something. Maybe a greeting of some sort? But it wasn't like I ever greeted people normally. It would be even more unnatural for me to suddenly start doing it out of the blue like that. Maybe I should bring up the transfer student. But it wasn't like I ever chatted with Rimi normally. It would be even more unnatural for me to suddenly start chatting with her out of the blue like that. I could thank her for the day before yesterday? No. Before I did that, maybe I should apologize for being so rude to her after she had done so much to help me. I could also ask her about why she had been there back then. I could ask her if maybe she had hugged me because she liked me. Or I could ask her about why she was at the side of the crucifixion. No. None of these topics were conversation starters at all. What was I supposed to do? The silence put more and more pressure on me. I knew I ought to say something, and I knew it would be awkward to stay silent, but I still couldn't force out any words. I hated this 3D world so goddamn much. I was tired of almost choking over just trying to talk. I just wanted to hurry up and go home to my comforting Seiratan.
ねえタク
Krimi's voice suddenly broke the silence. I jumped in surprise and a shudder ran through me. I still couldn't look up.
その一昨日はあの後大丈夫だった
Rimi's voice was quiet. I felt her breath faintly on my ear. When I looked up in surprise, I realized that she had moved her face really close to mine and she was now whispering in my ear. Rimi's body was right next to mine. The soft, warm body that had hugged me in the middle of that road. My mind was going completely blank. The only thing I could think of was the sensation of Rimi's body against
無事
mine.
に帰れたかなって結構心配した
I nodded frantically several times.
そっかよかったもうあんな危ないことしちゃダメだぞ
Upon telling me that, Rimi made to leave the classroom. I felt the sudden urge to ask her something. She had just said something dangerous like that. I wanted to ask her, back then, what did it all look like to you? Considering the fact that she hadn't mentioned anything in particular, it seemed like she didn't know anything about the people temporarily disappearing from the streets of Shibuya, nor anything about the wheelchair-bound shogun. Which would probably mean it had just been one of my delusions after all. That was why I wanted to ask her, but I didn't think I would be able to look up and do so after all this time. Either way, I couldn't do it today. I couldn't even prepare myself to ask her. So next time then, I'd ask her the very time I came to school. Yeah, I should probably organize the questions I wanted to ask her before then.
あれねえタク折原さんがこっち来たよ
The transfer student? Why was she coming over here? Was she going to come down on me for not helping her on the stairs earlier? But she didn't seem like the type of person to do that. Or maybe she wasn't coming up to me, but she actually wanted Rimi for something? The transfer student came up to Rimi, then stopped. She didn't say anything. What the hell? As long as Rimi was here, I couldn't raise my head. The transfer student's toes were fidgeting, but she still didn't try to say anything.
折原さんどうしたの
For some reason, the new student timidly then placed a single bandage on the edge of my desk. It was a fancy one with a picture of that weird character, Gero Froggy, emblazoned on it. Was she giving it to me? Ah, how do I react? This Orihara Kozue girl was kind of weird. What? Was she crying? Why was she crying? Was it because I didn't say anything? But the transfer student hadn't said anything to me either.
タクは怒ってるわけじゃないと思うよ
Kimi swooped in to cover for me. Come to think of it, that was a little bit odd. I didn't know next to anything about Rimi, and yet she knew a lot about me.
彼ってあんまり人と目を合わせようとしないの引っ込み思案ってやつだからそんなにガチガチに緊張しなくてもね私にも絆創膏くれるのありがとう
With that, the transfer student bowed her head deeply to Rimi, and then she sped her way back to her seat. It was almost like she was running away or something.
なんだ かよくわかんないんだけど、タク、その絆創膏をもらってあげるべきだと思う。
Why had she given it to me?
梢ちゃん、無口だよな。
I got the feeling Mizumi-kun had come back.
転校初日に俺が校内を案内したんだけどよ。
うわぁ、早くも手出したんだ。
まだ出してねえっつうの。んで、まあ1時間ぐらいかけてあちこち回ったんだけど、もう俺一人で延々と喋り続けたよ。あん時はさすがにちーっと疲れたぜ。しかもすぐ泣きべそかく。
そうそう、今も急に泣き出したから何が起きたかと思ってあたふたしちゃった。
そんだけピュアなんだよ。なあタク、お前ならわかるだろう。梢ちゃんの仕草一つ一つの可愛さってのがよ。お前流に言うなら萌えってやつだ。なんだ、クソでも我慢してんのか？
I shook my head from side to side as hard as I could.
タク、さっきからちっとも喋ってくれないんだ。
Yeah, that's because you are here. I wasn't ready for that. I had never talked to a friend who was also a girl, all friendly before. Then again, I'd never had a single female friend before. Now, throughout my entire life.
でもさ、今折原さんと話してみてなんとなく思ったんだけど、彼女と話してるとなんだか疲れちゃいそうかもなんて。
女子ってのはマジで同性に対して容赦ねえな。ま、梢ちゃんは俺が守るからいいけどな。
ほんの数十秒前に大地も相手するの疲れたって言ってなかった？
うっせ。梢ちゃんはタクと同じ匂いがするぜ。ほっとけねえって感じ？
それはわかるかも。
Wow. The sound of the bell told me that all classes were done for the day. The second it went off, I packed up my things, got up from my desk, and left the classroom. I couldn't stand the subtle distance I had between me and Remy for a second longer, so I wanted to get out of the classroom ASAP. Besides, I also had to stop by Manga Darake today. In the end, I hadn't been able to say a single word to Remy. I'd had several chances to talk to her, but just like this morning, I'd kept my mouth locked shut the entire time. I might have screwed up by doing that. It could make it even more difficult to talk to her the next time I saw her. I was sinking deeper and deeper into the thick swamp that was trying to figure out how the hell to act around Remy.
あ、お兄。
Just as I was about to leave the school building, I was hit with the voice of a certain irritating person. Nanami came running up to me, holding a trash can in her hands. She must have been in the middle of taking it out. Unfortunately for me, the bitch had spotted me. I tried to ignore her and speed my way out of there, but just like usual, Nanami refused to let that happen. The hem of my uniform was pulled tightly from behind.
妹見て逃げるなって何度言えばわかるの？
なんだよ。
なんだよじゃないわ。お兄が逃げるからナナもつい追いかけちゃうんじゃん。
Okay. Die Musik war ein bisschen zu laut, für dass man mich noch hört. Okay, then don't chase after me if you don't need something.
相変わらず家に電話かけてこないし、まあナナはもう諦めたけど、どうせお兄が真面目に連絡入れてくるとは思えないもんね。
Wow, she actually understood me for once. Then again, I didn't know how she wouldn't, being my sister and all, even though I had no needs in the slightest for a 3D one.
というわけで、これからも定期的にナナがお兄の部屋に様子見に行くから、感謝してよね。
Damn it, of course it had come to this. If only I could somehow be freed from the curse of my obnoxious little sister. Hell, even though it would never happen, I at least deserved some form of compensation for putting up with her. I thought about that kind of thing daily. Oh, that was it. This was my chance to put my plan from earlier into action. If I was lucky, it might even work as a modest form of revenge. I checked my surroundings, then I started walking towards the courtyard, signaling for Nanami to follow me.
何？
ちょっと来てくれ。
なんで？なんかあるの？
She was so unbelievably annoying. Was she incapable of following me or something? What a fucking idiot.
ナナミに大事な頼みがある。
え？頼み？お兄が？なのに？
Nanami's eyes went wide.
珍しいじゃん。お兄が頼み事なんて。
とにかく黙ってついてこいって。
あ、ちょっと待ってよ。
There weren't many people in the courtyard. During lunchtime, the place was always crowded with students eating lunch, but the only people who had bothered coming here after school were from the gardening club or whatever.
で、頼みって？
Nanami lowered the trash can she was carrying to the ground, then gave a big grin as she puffed out her chest.
あ、条件はマクで汚りね。その条件飲んでくれるんなら、本当は嫌だけど、お兄の頼み聞いてあげる。
Wow. Every little goddamn thing she did pissed me off. I couldn't believe she actually wanted to pay her back for this. Didn't help that I had already treated her to McD's before, too. Forget it.
わかった。おごる。
え、本当？今日のお兄、いつもと違うね。
Well, yeah, because I was lying, Fuhi. Sus for being a liar. Lololol. Warte. Netzlang, short for sorry. Habe ich noch nie gesehen. Of use in conjunction with lol or other common net slang. In example, fuhihi sos lololol. Although it is indeed an apology, it is often used in order to tease or provoke the other party instead. And with that, I handed Nanami my cell phone. I then asked her to call the prank caller whose number was stored in my call history. 03X733X991.
着歴の番号にかける？相手は誰？
ネットの知り合い。
Nanami was tilting her head with a suspicious expression on her face, so I quickly told a lie that would seem plausible to her.
どうしてナナがかけるの？
かければわかる。
なんか企んでない？
Oh my god, stop shut the fuck up. All you have to do is just shut up and do what I say. If you can't even do that, then just go home. I have no use for you.
じゃあもうお前には頼まない。
I went to snatch back the cell phone, but Nanami pulled her hand back, evading me.
あ、わかったってかけるよ。かければいいんでしょ？ほんとわがままなお兄だな。
Yeah, you should talk. Choking back my anger, I watched with bated breath as Nanami dialed the number in question. Nanami, blissfully unaware, put the cell phone to her ear and waited for them to answer. I noticed that on the hand she was holding the cell phone with, she was wearing a yellow bangle. It was the one I had given her, wasn't it? Then again, it was more something she had just decided to appropriate rather than me actually giving it to her. She even wore it when she went to school. Did she really like it that much? Even though it was just some cheap-ass bangle I had gotten for free? Nanami really did have no taste at all. Not that I could really speak for anyone else though. This didn't matter at all right now. Anyway, who was gonna answer the phone? Would it be some scary Jikyung piece of garbage? Best case scenario, it had just been a prank and had nothing to do with Shogun or Yua. Someone must have freaked up, so Nanami called out as she covered the receiver with her hand. Only to raise her eyebrows soon after, then she thrusted the phone back into my direction.
なんだ
なんだじゃないよ。現在使われてませんって言ってるよ。
え
I snatched the phone from Nanami and put it to my ear.
おかけになった電話番号は現在使われておりません。番号をご確認の上、もう一度おかけ直しください。
She was right. I guess that meant it really had been a prank, huh? It was a prank where you called a bunch of random numbers simultaneously over a couple of days, and when the prank was over, both the number and the phone were destroyed, or something like that. Either way, it was a pretty large-scale prank, but didn't matter to me either way. I knew now that the mysterious call had been nothing more than a prank, and nothing else mattered anymore.
ねえ、一体何なの？
もうお前用なし
Wow. Leaving Nanami standing there, I started to walk off, but it didn't take long for her to chase after me.
どういうことか説明してよ。
Shut up
お
already.
前掃除中だろゴミ箱置きっぱなしだぞ
ね、でも説明聞いてないもん。
僕は帰る
Without dealing with Nanami, I walked quickly to the school gate with her right on my tail.
おに、じゃあマクディおごる約束だからね。ちゃんと覚えといてよ。
Was mit dem Mülleimer? Bleibt er jetzt da mitten auf dem Platz stehen oder was?
知るか
ちょっと、嘘ついたの？
まあな
Nanami stopped dead in her tracks, looking pretty upset. But I kept right on moving.
おにのバカ！
She yelled out in a voice loud enough to echo throughout the entire area. Fed up with her, I went to turn around and saw her glaring at me with her hands on her hips.
おになんて、携帯の電磁波の影響で脳みそスカスカにされて死んじゃえ！
Shit, thanks to Nanami's screeching, more eyes were looking our way, even though I made it a point to set out as little as possible at school. My sister was the most obnoxious shithead of all time. Not giving a damn about what Nanami had said, I ran off toward the school gate. It was best to retreat in times like this. Das Beste ist halt, wie er mal wieder absolut keine Selbstreflexion hat, der Kerl. Nanami's voice could still be heard even after I passed through the school gate, making me feel completely and utterly drained. Higashi Matasema was one of my favorite artists. They were ultra famous and their fans would always form long lines at every one of their events. I'd heard that the new Bloodtune Dojinji that would come out this summer had sold out in no time flat. I'd wanted to go too, but all of the events where it was being sold had been way too crowded, to the point where it would have been too much for me. Because of that, I'd found myself tearfully giving up. It'd been naive of me to think Manga Darake would be safe just because they had consignment sales. There had indeed been some consignment sales, but they had been wieso kann ich das nicht aussprechen? Annihilated, so, in practically an instant. On various online auctions, the premium price was set at tens of thousands of yen. All scalpers should die in a fire. Regardless, with all that in mind, I thought that it was probably impossible to get my hands on it. However, just yesterday, while I've been surfing Ed channel, I just so happened to see that the new issue had been recently restocked at Manga Darake, which was why I'd headed for it immediately.
神様、奇跡を起こしたまえ。
I prayed to the heavens in front of the store and then stormed inside. I scanned the doujinshi section with my eyes as wide as diner plates. Ich finde es ja interessant, dass sie in den Geschäften tatsächlich Doujinshi überhaupt haben, ne? So, also nicht nur an Events, sondern auch so einen normalen, sag mal, Anime-Manga-Shop. Statt halt die ganzen offiziellen Sachen, dass du halt quasi Fan-Mangas da drin auch haben kannst. Schon interessant, ne? I went back and forth down the aisle, searching over and over again to make sure I didn't miss anything. But I couldn't find it. QQ. No, was it already sold out? I casually observed the cashier. It was a girl. She wasn't very cute, but she did seem friendly. I'd never even once used the hyper-advanced technique known as asking the clerk about whether or not they had a certain item in stock. The reason was, of course, that I didn't have the courage to do so. And not only that, but the title of Higashi Matasema's new book was Seiratan Cosplayer Gone Wild. So, yeah, asking about it was completely and utterly impossible. Excuse me, miss, but do you have a copy of Higashi Matasema's Seiratan Cosplayer Gone Wild? If I ask a female clerk something like that, I'd no doubt be labeled as a pervert, and I knew that for a fact. Thank you very much. In the end, I simply gave up on asking the clerk anything and exited the store dejectedly. Or maybe I should go to Ed Cafe? Slipping between the two as I walked, a sword I had seen before flashed past the edge of my vision. It was a sword with a distinctive two-pronged blade, the one that Girl B, the girl who had called herself Senna, had been carrying around the city. The crowded center guy, the tip of the sword jutted above the heads of people walking down the street. As it got closer to me, I hurriedly took refuge in a nearby arcade. When I peered out from the shadows, it didn't take long for Senna herself to appear, the sword resting on her shoulder. Wearing an expression that was just as terrifying as ever, she walked quickly towards the station. She didn't seem to have noticed me. But even then, after having experienced the humiliation play that was lugging around a sword just like hers, the bold way that Senna walked around without a care in the world has impressed me. Was she not embarrassed to hold a huge sword like that? I mean, she had to have been questioned by a police officer at least once. No way she hadn't. As I pondered that, Senna's figure got farther and farther away. Where do they sell better D-swords like that one she has? I wondered. The one I had gone a hold of didn't glow, nor did it have a badass shape, so I wasn't exactly satisfied with it. In comparison to the sword Senna was carrying, mine was far less impressive in terms of design. The entire reason behind me getting a D-sword was to use it as a protective charm. Back at the Scramble Crossing, I'd been trembling in fear and wished for something I could rely on. After Remy had shown up, I'd become slightly more stable, but the situation surrounding me was not getting any better. I still had a lot of enemies, such as Shogun, Yua, etc. That was the reason why I wanted to get my hands on a D-sword that looked way stronger than the one I actually had. Of course, there was also the collector spirits found in every otaku. As if drawn to Senna's sword, I'd been staggering over toward Scramble Crossing without realizing it. Oh God, I bit my lip. I didn't want to be out in front of the station. I would reluctantly go to Center Guy or school or whatever because I had things I had to do there. But if I could help it, I preferred not going anywhere near them. Having a crowd of total strangers standing around me made me feel as if any escape route had been stolen away, and just the illusion of that made it hard to breathe. Unsurprisingly, the area in front of the station was infested with people. I was starting to feel more and more sick, so I opted to look down at the ground to try to hold back the nausea a bit. Because of that, the next time I looked up, I realized I'd lost sight of the conspicuous sword. It had looked like she had been walking towards the Hachiko statue, but... Right then, the light above Scramble Crossing turned green. A sea of people rushed into the intersection from various directions. It became pretty chaotic. A whole host of people walking every which way, and they did it all without even so much as bumping into each other. When I saw something like that, I realized how unrealistic the empty Scramble Crossing I'd seen in my delusion the other day really was. There probably wasn't even a single second in the entire year where there were no people in this place. What was I even trying to accomplish by chasing after Senna in the first place? I hadn't even been able to ask the friendly Manga Darake employing whether they had something in stock, so how exactly was I supposed to talk to someone who looked unfriendly and scary looking like Senna? Besides, she might have been my enemy. I didn't know what she would do to me if I carelessly followed her around without any form of protection. What was wrong with me? I should just go home. I finally decided on that, but right when I was about to turn around, I noticed a white chain lying down on the street. Couldn't see the end of it because it was concealed by legs and various pedestrians, but it seemed to be stretching from where I was standing all the way to the other side of Scramble Crossing. What the hell? It was a ridiculously long chain. Was it for construction or something? But there was no evidence of construction going on anywhere. Couldn't believe they had left a chain lying around like this. Was this a location location they were shooting at for some movie or TV show? No, they wouldn't be filming at a time as crowded as this. Okay, then did someone throw it away? A chain this long? That'd really be hard enough just to bring it this far out here. Regardless, it was definitely going to get in the way of people and cars. Tilting my head in confusion, I examined my surroundings to see how people around me were reacting to it. I thought it would be dangerous if someone caught their leg on it, but not a single person was paying any attention to it. I rubbed my eyes and tried looking at it once more, thinking that it might be an optical illusion or something, but the chain was still there. I didn't have the courage to touch it, though. It creeped me out too much. It wasn't a cheap-looking plastic one. It was an entirely, extremely sturdy-looking iron chain. How long had this thing been sitting there? If these were normal circumstances, I'd think it was some kind of trap. After which I would have run away in fear, suspecting that something terrifying might have been waiting for me. But now, for whatever reason, I couldn't help but wonder where the chain led. My mind was overtaken by the compulsive obsession that told me I had to follow the chain. I crossed the scrambled crossing before the light turned red, bumping into several pedestrians as I did. At the end of the continuous chain was an old dark green train car that was sitting next to the Hachiko statue. The wheels had been removed, so it was closer to a monument or an exhibit rather than a functioning train car. You were supposed to be able to enter it freely too. The white chain was extending from the open door to the inside of the train. There were tons of people parked in front of Hachiko, but not one was paying any attention to the chain. They didn't show any signs that they were even aware of it. As well as that, there were no signs of people on the train at all. With a gulp, I peered inside the train car. So viel zum Thema, dass er es für eine Trap, für eine Falle gehalten hätte. Es war eine Falle. In that moment, I realized it was a trap. I couldn't believe it myself, which was why I hadn't suspected it at all before. The car appeared to be empty, but there was the figure of a single person inside. Aoi Senna was sitting cross-legged on a burgundy train seat. Her sharp gaze was fixed firmly on me. For some reason, she was holding a light blue popsicle in her hand. That was a Crunchy-kun, right? Forget it. I couldn't care less about Crunchy-kuns right now. More importantly, the gigantic D-sword she had been carrying was mysteriously nowhere to be found. I wondered where she had even managed to put that thing, with how huge it was and all. In place of the sword was a white chain coiling around one of her legs. Which reminded me that back when I had first met her in a Sentai, she had said something about finding her in a train car in front of the station. This must have been what she meant. Was she the one who had put the chain here? Could she really have been lugging around such a long chain? It looked like it weighed over 10 kilograms, and not only that, but it had to have been over 50 meters long. I had no idea what was up with this girl. She was entirely unknown to me. She was normal. Could she be Shogun? Wir haben Shogun getroffen. Sie kann ja also nicht Shogun sein. Feeling scared now, I moved to run away without saying anything. Only for a sharp voice to strike me right then.
Hide.
I automatically stopped dead in my tracks. A blatant, commanding tone, one that acted as if the train belonged to them. Of course, I had no intention of going inside. I didn't know who she was. I was scared of her, and I was awful at talking to 3D women when alone with them. I didn't want anything to do with her.
入れと言っている。
Senna's attitude told me I wasn't allowed to talk back. She had moved a muscle, but I didn't know what she would do if I showed even the slightest hint of trying to escape. Maybe she was actually a Dekyun, one that would beat someone up without hesitation. Talk about scary. But if I showed her even the slightest hint of submissiveness, she would walk all over me. I'd had to deal with Dekyun several times up until now. Whenever that happened, the best thing to do was to just run away. It didn't matter if you obeyed them or not. You would get hurt after they were done with you, no matter what you did. So the best option was to just run away. Let's see if I could find an opening. Suddenly something from behind pushed me hard. Caught off guard, I was unable to brace my legs and toppled clumsily to the ground. Stunned, I looked back towards the entrance to see who the hell had pushed me. There were a lot of people outside the train waiting around for appointments and whatnot, but I couldn't pinpoint which one of them was the culprit. Maybe they had already run away. Why had they felt the need to shove me? Why would someone do something like that? I must have hit my knee when I had fallen down, as it hurt a little. Avoiding eye contact with Senna, I staggered back to my feet. I suddenly realized the bundle of chains that had been at Senna's feet just a moment ago had disappeared without a trace. I thought she had moved it somewhere, but there had been no sound to indicate that, and she was still sitting on the same seat she had been sitting on the entire time. Even if she had moved it, where the hell had she moved it to? I didn't see it anywhere on the train.
エラーはどこにあった？
Senna, completely unconcerned with how lost I was, asked me something unintelligible yet again.
だから私をつけてきたんじゃないのか？
As I shook my head left and right in confusion, Senna's expression became increasingly stern. She then eventually looked away from me, let out a small sigh, and took a bit of her popsicle. Freed from her sharp gaze, I nearly sank down to the floor once again. Talk about looks that could kill. I would have sat down on one of the seats if I could have, but when I realized that she might have said something to me if I did, I couldn't bring myself to.
お前が私をつけてきているのには気づいていた。私が作ったエラーが見えていただろう。
だからエラーって何？
鎖だ。白い鎖。
If that was what she meant, then yeah, I had seen it. I had followed the weird thing all the way here after all.
でもどこにもない。消えたよ。
消した。私の妄想だからな。
Delusion? What was she talking about?
じゃあ剣は？
お前も持っているだろう。
Excuse me? No, I don't have one. How could I? This wasn't going well. I could barely get the word out.
それより、お前は何者なんだ？見えているみたいだけど。
は？
Senna glanced at me, then jerked her chin towards the
こ
window.
の窓の外に何が見える？
People. Lots of people. I felt like there were even more people than before. I felt like I was going to get a headache just from looking at them. There were people with their heads glued to their cell phones, people smiling over phone calls, people standing and staring at a stream of people. Practically everything I saw out the window was people standing around waiting for other people. I mean, if there were so many people here, why hadn't anyone come into the train since I had gotten on?
完璧な世界がそこにあると思うか？あるはずがない。エラーは確かに存在する。すべてのものは人も含めて電気仕掛けだからな。
What kind of Chuni plotline was that? Jokes aside, I also thought about similar things pretty often. And I wasn't trying to say that Chuni plotlines were bad or anything. After all, the world was overflowing with books, movies, and anime that were nothing but Chuni insanity. Why was it that a writer or a movie director or whoever else could come up with Chuni plot lines like that, and it was all well and good, but when amateurs like me did it, everyone made fun of us. The world's greats had all been Chunibios. Just think about it. The Wright brothers had genuinely thought that they could fly through the sky 100 years ago. Napoleon had boasted that the word impossible is not in my dictionary. That was why Chunibios weren't something to be mocked. It was a path that all of the world's greats had taken. But my question was, why had this girl suddenly started spouting all this Chuni shit at me?
何を見ているかじゃない。何を見せられているか。人は体の外からの情報を五感によって得ているけど、その受け取る情報のおよそ 80% は視覚から入ってくる。そして視覚から得られた映像はパルス信号となって視神経を通り脳に送られる。
Just like a telephone, I thought to myself absent-mindedly. A telephone converted your voice into electrical signals and then sends that information to a distant location.
電話か。似ていると言えなくもない。
Had she just read my mind? No, there was no way. Had I been mumbling to myself without realizing it again?
VR 技術を知っているか？
What? Virtual reality? Of course. I didn't actually answer her aloud.
ビジュアルリビルディング。
Visual rebuilding? Okay. Huh? I was wrong. I'd never heard of that.
アメリカの精神生理学分野で研究が行われている技術だ。生まれながらに目が不自由な人でも目の前にある景色がちゃんと見えるようになる。ビデオカメラのような映像機器を介してな。どうやってという顔をしているな。だが仕組みとしては単純な話だ。ビデオカメラが映した映像も脳を流れる神経パルスもどちらも突き詰めれば電気による信号なんだぞ。要は神経パルスにコンバートできる技術さえあればいい。すでに実際にテストは成功している。ある研究チームが特許を取得済みだ。
It was patented? Patented? Seriously? I thought that it was just a fairly hardcore delusion with an impressive amount of depth and detail behind it.
その特許から読み取れることがある。
Senna, who had been looking out of the window the whole time, turned her face to me. She slowly crossed her legs.
ある意図的な情報を神経パルスへコンバートすることが可能なら、人の五感すべて、さらには人の意志そのものもコントロールできるんじゃないか。
Even though it was right in front of Shibuya Station, it was strangely quiet on the train. It felt as if it had been deprived of sound itself. It was obviously an illusion, but I couldn't help but remember the delusion I had several days ago of the deserted Shibuya, as if as I thought about it, I couldn't take my eyes off the crowd moving outside the window.
さっき言ったように人は電気仕掛けだ。脳だけじゃなく全身に張り巡らされている神経にも電気が通っている。つまり肉体的な動きまでも操れるということになるんだ。理論的にはな。
This girl, I was taken aback. This girl was even more delusional than both me and you are combined. What she was saying sounded logical, but it was clearly a total pipe dream.
事実、特許を取得した研究チームもその方向へと研究内容をシフトしている。あまりに危険すぎる内容だったからアメリカ大統領が歯止めをかけようとして行政命令を出したくらいだ。
How much of what she said was actually true?
いかなる機関であろうと政府との事前合意なしに人体の機密の研究を行うことを禁じる。それを支援することも同様である。
Senna looked downward and clasped her hands, resting on her knees tightly.
だが世の中は腐った連中ばかりだ。倫理を無視して自分の利益のためだけに他者を平気で犠牲にするような連中がな。ヘドが出る。
After she finished voicing her disgust, she stuck the last chunk of the nearly melted crunchy-kun in her mouth, then suddenly stood up. I reflexively started to shrink back, only to run into the wall behind
無
me.
知は罪だ。知らない方が幸せなこともあるという人間もいるが、そんなのはただの甘えだ。世界を疑え、仕組みを知れ。この世界は完璧じゃない。
She was coming toward me. Thinking she might hit me, I tried to shield my face with my arm, but in the end she slipped right past me without doing anything.
お前の見ている景色は本物か？
Without looking at me, she murmured that as we passed each other, and then she promptly exited the train by herself. I stared out the window at Senna as she walked away. Without looking back at me even once, she quickly disappeared into the sea of people. In the end, I had absolutely no clue as to what she had been trying to tell me. The only thing I took from it was that Senna despised the world. A typical Shunibyo. From my point of view, though, it sucked ass to have her shoot her poisonous Denpa bullshit at me without even letting me get a word in it. Her tone of voice alone had made me feel like I was being lectured. The way she talked was often a more characteristic when it came to 2D, but in reality it only served to make her feel even more like a total DQ. But the fact that she hadn't attacked me was a relief. A surprise, considering that for some reason she always gave off the aura that she was just raring to slap anyone and every. Yeah. I wanted to take a breather after that, so I sat down on the seat where Senna had been sitting before. Immediately following that, a DQ-looking couple suddenly came into the car. After that came a trio of people that were obviously DQ Kogallos, I guess, or Kogallos. Ich habe keine Ahnung, wie man das ausspricht. Aber das sind die halt diese dick geschminkten halt. Then an older middle-aged man and then a young businessman wearing a suit. So. Ja, hier Jalu oder so ähnlich heißen die, glaube ich. Ah, die less extreme types sind Kojalus. Okay. Die haben einfach nur kurze Röcke an. The train car had become claustrophobic in the blink of an eye. Before Senna had left, no one had even tried to enter the car, so where the hell had they all come from? The voices of the DQ couple and co-gallows were way too loud. So I had quickly got out of there while telling them all to go to hell in my head.